Right. I think I'm doing everything I want to be doing here anyway. If we're not at this point. Good evening again.
Evening.
Heart Sutra Part 4. So this week we are going to finish up. We pick up with nothing to attain, a bodhisattva relies on prajna paramita. So we've just gone through the whole list, finishing with no knowledge and no attainment. And with nothing to attain, a bodhisattva relies on prajna paramita. What's that about? If there's nothing to attain, what's this bodhisattva guy or gal doing? So bodhisattva, you will recall, is one who has undertaken a vow for their own personal awakening and to work for the liberation of others. This individual is relying kind of means the same thing as taking refuge. We take the refuges on Sundays. So this bodhisattva is taking refuge in prajna paramita. Prajna paramita is the sixth of the paramitas, wisdom paramita. And by construction, that includes the other five. So it includes dana, sila, so generosity, the precepts, energy, forbearance, meditation. So it's this all-encompassing practice. But prajna paramita is also the Dharma itself. And there's something that interesting that happened with the move eastward, the Mahayana movement, but the shift of Buddhism out of India northeast. In Indian Buddhism, stupas were built. So the Buddha was cremated and the relics, and they fought over who would have the relics and who'd get to put them in stupas. But they figured it all out. So they built stupas with the Buddha's relics inside. And the stupas were like triangles and squares and circles and bowls, and there are 5 shapes in a stupa. But as it went east, there was a shift, and the Dharma became a substitute for the Buddha. So we've got the Trikaya, the 3 bodies of the Buddha, the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya, the bliss body, the ultimate body, the bliss body, and the manifestation body. The Dharmakaya is the fully realized Buddha that's not confined by space and time, Tathagata. Dharmakaya, the Dharma body. So the stupa, whenever the sutra was put in a building, you build a stupa around it. Whenever the Dharma was taught, you could build a stupa around that. And pagodas, if you look at a pagoda, it's got the same geometric shapes that form a stupa. So pagodas are actually forms of this. So this whole idea of taking refuge in prajna paramita, it shows up in these physical things that are scattered all over Asia, these stupas. The other thing we're taking refuge in is emptiness itself. Wisdom is emptiness, and it's not emptiness as in nihilistic emptiness. The lists where we said no path, no knowledge, no attainment, and so forth. Excuse me. That's not negation as in nihilism. It's not going to the other extreme from there being something to there being no thing. It's just saying that this something doesn't exist like you thought it did. It's not denying existence per se. It's challenging our perception of mode of existence. So this taking refuge in prajna paramita is also taking refuge in this form is emptiness, emptiness is form, that liminal space, if you will. And thus the mind, we could spend a long time talking about what mind is without hindrance. So where's my list of hindrances? I think that's in, I've got several books I brought, too many books. The hindrances are another. Hindrances are here, I believe. Nope, hindrances are here. Nope, thinking something else. So there is far beyond all hindrances. The hindrances are the obstacles. Hindrances are the barriers. They're the things we create. They're ignorance, greed, and anger, basically. These are the hindrances. So by relying on emptiness, there's no hindrance there. If there's no obstacle, there can't be fear. This is my list of fears. Fear of survival. Specifically, we'll not be able to survive if we practice generosity. Fear of criticism. Fear of death. Fear of a bad existence, which is karma and rebirth. And fear of speaking before an assembly. So these are all practice-oriented fears, but they're more general fears. These fears, if there's no obstacles, there's no basis for fear. So by relying on taking refuge in this space, there's nowhere that a fear can show up in there. And far beyond all inverted views. This is my inverted views list. These are all commentaries on the Heart Sutra, by the way. So the inverted views, the view that anything existent can be permanent even if it is compounded, the view that satisfaction can be found in the world of compounded entities, the view that there's an abiding permanent core, a self or a soul, the view that because things are okay, you get the point. This is fascinating to me because we've just gone through the last few weeks negating all of these lists, and now we rely on Prajnaparamita, start throwing up the lists again. It's just fascinating. And what this is about, it's getting back to that point I just talked about, which is it's not the lists per se that are the problem. It's the way we relate to the lists. If we think of the lists as lists of things, if we think of the 5 aggregates as 5 discrete things, we're getting into trouble. If we recognize that the 5 aggregates are simply a way of describing a mode of existence where these are just kind of baskets of stuff, amorphous stuff. So the thing doesn't exist per se, it's just other stuff. If we start seeing our lists in that way, as ways to help us break things down and move into this place where it's not that there's nothing, there's just no things. So if we start using the lists in that way, it can actually be helpful. Far beyond all inverted views, one realizes nirvana. Nirvana is another one of these. Nirvana is a word, and it's really easy. And I know when I first started practicing, it's like, I'm going to practice till I wake up. Nirvana is this way of being that's out there. It's this thing I want to have. I want to do this. I want to be this. Well, no. Nirvana is really the acceptance of non-attaining, if you want to think of it in those terms. Nirvana, there's lots of different ways of getting at nirvana. One way, the way I really like the description of nirvana is Thanissaro, who talks of nirvana as like fire unbound. And he talks about how fire was used in the Indian culture 2,500 years ago, the importance of fire and how fire was also viewed as an element, and how all the words used around clinging and craving and release applied to the fuel and to the clinging of the fire to the fuel, and the fire is just released from the fuel. It's still there, it's still the element, it's just not attached to the fuel. But other constructions of this word include nir, which is the negation, and then vana can be derived from the root vri, which is the same root as obstacle that we were just talking about. So it's no obstacles. So there's lots of different ways of getting here. Another way I've seen talked about is equanimity. So best not to get too caught up in the word, just to think of it as liberation, as freedom. All Buddhas of past, present, and future rely on prajna paramita, we talked about that, and thereby attain unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment. So there is this, in the Pali Canon, it is talked about as consciousness that does not land. If the sun shines through the window, where does it land, Lord? On the opposite wall. If there's no wall, on the ground. If there's no ground, on the water. If there's no water, where does it land? It does not land, Lord. Consciousness that does not land. In the Lotus Sutra, there's this mind-exploding piece, chapter 16 of the Lotus Sutra, where the revelation is that Buddha taught gazillions of bodhisattvas who emerged from the emptiness under the earth, and emptiness again, like space under the earth. How did he do this? Well, he's without beginning, he's without end, he's not bound by space. Buddha is both incarnate right here, right now, as the person who was sitting in front of those people, and also just outside time and space. Buddha is Dharmakaya. So, unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment is a samadhi of manifesting in multiple bodies, myriad bodies or something like that, which if you think about it, that is Avalokiteshvara. That's a samadhi, it's a way of existing, a state. That is Avalokiteshvara, by being able to liberate people, by being able to help people wherever they are. You're showing up for people or things in the way they need. That's this very fluid way to exist. Therefore, now we get onto the mantra. What is this? So we've done the sutra, and now we get into this mantra piece. There is a school of thought that says this is an accretion, it should just be thrown away. It's just junk that's added on by some superstitious folks. But then there's this school of thought that says, well, we've already stripped away the beginning part of the sutra, which is the thus have I heard in Varanasi, and the time, the place, the audience, all that's gone. The whole thing. This is, in many ways, none of this is a sutra. This is all mantra, which is why we chant it on Sundays. We chant it as mantra or dharani. We don't chant it as sutra. The chanting is mantra or dharani. So it's just maybe, what do you call it? The thing within itself. It's like a mirror shows a mirror shows a mirror. Right? This is recursive is the word I'm looking for. So the mantra, in this way of thinking, we've gone beyond understanding. And if we go beyond understanding, beyond cognitive understanding, which we have done in this sutra, in these words, what do we do? Where do we go with that? And this is kind of where we go and what we do with that. The mantras classically, they're vibration. And in the Sanatana Dharma, in what we now call the Hindu tradition, it is very common for a student with their guru to spend some time with them, and then the guru will assign them a mantra. And it's a very personal thing, and it's based on the guru's assessment of the vibrational energy of the body, of that particular physical form. It comes from a school of thought that the whole universe is nothing but vibration, which if you look at it in quantum terms is pretty much true. So mantra, we use the words mantra and dharani are often used interchangeably. Technically, they mean different things, although they do seem to be used very much interchangeably, and they're acknowledged as such. A mantra is used for protection of thought. So we recite a mantra to keep, to protect our thoughts, to keep us focused, to keep us sane. A dharani No, wrong way around. That's a Dharani. A mantra is chanted for magical powers. A Dharani is chanted to keep us focused. A mantra is used for magical powers to protect us, to protect our thoughts, to stop evil spirits and the like. So this is described as a mantra, but then in the Lotus Sutra, there are a couple of chapters in the Lotus Sutras which are Dharanis, and they're gibberish. I wish I could remember the Jabberwock, because it's like the Jabberwock, C.S. Lewis, because it's poetry. It kind of sounds like English. It's constructed to sound like English. It's got nouns and verbs and so forth, but it's gibberish. And these Dharanis, they're exactly the same. They're constructed so they have feminine endings, so you know it's a feminine noun and you know there's a verb and it's got a certain energy to it, but it's gibberish. It's just gibberish. But it's magical. The sounds are supposed to be magical. We discount those these days, but I'd ask maybe to create a little bit of room for suspension of disbelief around that. Many, maybe all of you have heard me talk about, Beth and I, my wife and I, we will occasionally, when we were first spending time together, we'd text each other a reasonable amount, and it was very common for us both to receive for me to receive a text from Beth right as I sent one, which meant we were both typing at exactly the same time. Very common now for us to be thinking the same thing. And it's not time and place related. It's not like, there's the same external trigger. There's just very clearly some kind of connection. And one of my favorite stories around this was Rupert Sheldrake with an African tribe. They were out hunting. He was doing some anthropological work. They killed an antelope and they were taking it back. And they were all singing and dancing, and it was really heavy, and they were wondering how they'd get it all back. And Sheldrake said to them, "So why don't you send somebody back to get folks to come help?" And said, "Oh, they already know. They're on their way. And they've got the fire going. They're ready." And they were. So maybe there's just some stuff we've forgotten. Maybe there's just some stuff we don't know. But that's mantra. That's mantra and Dharani. And the words here introducing it, therefore know the Prajna Paramita as the great miraculous mantra, the great bright mantra, the supreme mantra. Those words, and when you go back to the Sanskrit, those words are words that parallel unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment. So the mantra is actually being described in words that mirror enlightenment. So the mantra is actually being set up as enlightenment itself. A Dharani or a mantra is normally recited to a deity or to somebody, to a deity to ask for protection or to ask for help in remembering. In this case, it is the deity. The mantra itself is enlightenment. It is realization. It is the deity. So there's this very recursive thing going on. There's also this recurring feminine flavor, a very intentional feminine flavor. One of the words here, I think it's the word for bright, great bright, is Mahavidya, which is a word used in a lot of the Indian religions of the time, and it means it's used for female deities. So like Kali and Tara, these would be collectively within Mahavidya. So it's also, we've got the Gatha being set up, the Dharani being set up as this female embodiment of deity. It's really an interesting construct going on here. So the Gatha is it's being described here as very special and very precious, as an embodiment of the Sutra, as an embodiment of enlightenment itself, as enlightenment itself. What does that mean? there's another, I won't do much with this, but I will point, there's another commentary I've got here, which is the Dalai Lama's commentary. And at the stub end of his commentary, which is where he gets into the implicit meaning of the Heart Sutra. The mantra contains the implicit or hidden meaning. We can read the first go as an exhortation to enter the path of accumulating merit. The second is an exhortation to the path of preparing the mind to deeply receive emptiness. There are 5 steps in the Tibetan tradition, 5 discrete steps. And it's common in the Tibetan tradition to do this, he reads this as the 5 steps being recited within the Gatha. So you can do all sorts of things with this stuff. Or we can just take it as it's a Gatha. And that also goes to the translation. Gate, gate, again, that's typically we hear that as gone, gone, can just mean go. But my recollection is the word for gone would be gata, not gate. Gate has some, it has a different valence, and it doesn't quite mean go or quite mean gone, and it's got a feminine flavor to it again. These are all very nuanced words, and it's very, very subtle what's going on. And it's obviously been lost. But the intention here, it seems to me, is that this is magical, it's powerful, and again, it comes to, it's just chanting, and it's an expression of the ineffable itself. I'm going to let Hakuin, and this is probably my favorite commentary on the Heart Sutra, have the last word here. Hakuin, somewhere in this, he's a crusty old Japanese guy from the 18th century, I think, and somewhere in there, the style of these kind of commentaries, you'd have the whole sutra written out, and then you'd have little marginal notes. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Buffoon! And in one of these, he's liar. So right at the end here, for gate, 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 paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. Beyond. So para means beyond, and that seems to be that's the strongest word here. Beyond. This is all about going beyond. So gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. To serve a superior man is easy. To please him, an impossible task. A shred of whirling mist sails together with a lone white gull. The autumn waters are a single color with the far autumn sky. A rain squall sweeps the sky from a hamlet in the south to a hamlet in the north. A new bride carries a box lunch to her mother-in-law in the fields. Grandchild is fed with morsels from grandfather's mouth. So just to serve the superior man is the awakened person, right? So to serve such a person is easy. To please them, they're not attached to anything. They're just really hard to please. You've got to be absolutely gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate to please them. A shred of whirling mist sails together with the lone white gull. The sutra and the dharani together. They're expressions of the same thing. The autumn waters are a single color with the far autumn sky. The same. The 2 pieces, because this is being written in response to the gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. So it's saying, this is the whole sutra. The 2 are the same. They're different and yet the same. And then the rest of it is just ordinary life. Get on with your life. That's where this is. A rain squall sweeps the sky from a hamlet in the south to a hamlet in the north. A new bride carries a box lunch to her mother-in-law in the fields. Grandchild is fed with morsels from grandfather's mouth. Ordinary life. But it's ordinary life after awakening. So if I've done this right, then this will stop recording.